Alright, we have a fault code for driver's airbag. Battery voltage low. That could be in the history. It does says history up here. Maybe the battery was dead and it's someone's replaced the battery. Not sure about that just yet, but we are more focused on the driver's airbag. Too high, resistance too high. So what we can do here is we can go to live data. Sometimes you'll get the data, some cars you don't get the data, but we'll see, we'll try our luck. And what I'm interested is the resistance on the airbags. So right down here you see driver's airbag resistors, passenger airbag resistance. You got all different resistors here for all different airbag, and pre-tensioners. So we just select all that and see straight away, you can see all the resistors are staying at 2.5, around 2.5, which is pretty universal resistance for a lot of airbag components. Anything higher than that or anything lower than that, a little bit you can go. Obviously if it's up to about 2, you might still be okay. If it gets to about 3 ohm, it can still be okay. Computer might not detect fault, but anything significantly big numbers, upwards or downwards to 2.5 is usually a problem. And you can see we have a airbag fault for driver's airbag, and we can see it on the live data to 25.4 ohm. So what that usually means with the experience, we may have a problem with the clock spring. I know Hyundai's clock springs are pretty bad for filing like this, and I have changed many of them in the past. So one test you can do is you can start the car and we can watch this. I can get rid of all of them now, and we'll just select the driver's one because we're not really interested on other airbags because we know they are working. We don't have fault code for it. We just go driver's airbag, and right here what I want to do is, while I'm watching the data, I want to turn this wheel left or right and see if that makes any difference on that resistance. Just go all the way left and all the way right at different positions, and it's not changing at all. So you can definitely have a problem with the airbag itself right here, and you can also have a problem with the clock spring, or module or wiring too. But more than likely the most common problems are them clock springs. That's what I was checking, but it did not make any difference while I was turning the wheel. Usually if it is partially broken, intermittent sort of problem, what you're gonna see here is the numbers will jump up and down. So from 25 will come down to 7, 3, 2 as you're turning, and you find a sweet spot, and you can make the airbag fault go disappear as well. That way it's a quick and very easy test to do if you got a sort of like intermittent problem. But this one not moving at all means the clock spring might be completely bad, short, or open. I don't know at this stage, or it is not connected. Somebody who's been working on it didn't connect the plug. It can very possibly happen. The reason I'm focusing on Hyundai clock spring on this Hyundai one is, like I said, I have experience with this Hyundai clock spring going bad all the time. Second, none of our buttons on the steering are working. The clock spring, your cruise controls, trips, computer buttons, and here the audio buttons, none of them are working. So I'm focusing more into clock spring here because of that reason. From here, obviously the scan tool wasn't much help on the live data. What we're gonna do here is we'll probably go and find the wiring plug for the airbag, and then we might do some testing there. Alright, I'm just trying to get to the airbag connectors at the bottom first. Just gonna take that screw from that plastic on the steering, and we'll just pull this. There might be more screws up there too. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think I see a screw there, so we can sort of turn and come to this position, and you can get to that screw there. You get rid of that. Also, we can go to the other side same way, and we'll take the screw right there, just like that. And then we gotta take the keys out, and we'll pull this cover down like that. This is out. We'll just set it aside. The top cover probably can stay there, but we'll see. Firstly, I just want to visually inspect if all the connectors are intact. At the bottom of the clock spring, that's your clock spring right there. That's your airbag connector, and at the bottom you got another plug there, the white plug, and that should be for other controls like your horn and all that. The horn is working. We know the horn circuit is intact, but other stuff, other buttons on the steering is not working. And the cruise control button is working for some reason now. If you can see on the dash there, cruise control, yeah. But the radio buttons, let's turn the radio up so we can hear. The mute button not working, that's not working. That radio button still not functioning. Let's go to trip computer. Now trip computer is working. If you look up here, I'm just pressing the button. Trip computer is also working. So all I did is just wiggle that wiring a little bit and everything started working. Cruise off. Cruise off. Trip computer is working. Steering modes. So these buttons are working. So just try a different position here. I'm just trying different position to see that I'm on this position of the steering now, and my trip computer is not changing. So the steering buttons is working. It changes the steering comfort, sports, or normal. But anyway, not to worry about that. I'm just seeing what are working, what's not working. But trip is also working now, so it's working. Let's go to a different position. See, it just stops working now. Now go back to the other position, and the trip is working again. Let's go back different position, and no, it's working. Working still working. Still working. Still working. Let's go back to all the way to the right, and it's not working, not working, not working. It's working again, not working, working. Yeah, it's very intermittent. Now the cruise button is working, sort of working and not working. That's working. Not working, working. So let's go to the left it's almost like the left side has a problem. The cruise control was coming on and off before. It's not working now. Something is changing up here, right here when I press the cruise button, but the cruise light's not coming on, so that's something. So let's try a different position, trying to get that cruise to work. Trying different position. No, cruise still not. Oh, there you go. Cruise is working, right? Sorry, I was pressing the wrong button. Maybe just a different way Hyundai is doing it. So cruise is working. Alright, cruise buttons is working. You can see at the bottom corner. Trip computer is also working. Let's find a place where trip doesn't work again. There you go, trip's not working. Cruise is working. Cruise is still working. Volumes, let's try the radio. I'm just pressing on the button as I'm turning the wheel. I'll just turn the volume up so we can hear if anything changes. There you go. No, that volume button is definitely not working. Nothing is working on the radio both ways. Okay, but we got cruise working. That's a progress. We got trip computers are working. Let's reset that for a second. Yeah, reset button is working too. So it's very intermittent. So if I turn the steering, keep pressing on the trip button, and you'll find a spot where it will not work. See that spot on the steering doesn't work. If I move the steering a little bit, it start working again on the dash. You can see. So definitely looking like a clock spring problem with the cruise control and trip. I still don't know about the radio side of it, but all I did is down here just push on that connector. The connector didn't look like it was loose. I think when I'm moving this, I think I'm moving the whole airbag, everything. The clock spring, everything. So I think that's what fixed the problem. So I'll just wiggle on that wiring and see if we can make this radio buttons to come on live. So our trip's still working, cruise control still working. Cruise control still working. It's so intermittent, it's not really consistent, but it is sort of working. So I'm just wiggling on that. Yeah, the radio button's still not functioning. Now the trip computer and cruise control, everything looking like we definitely have a cruise control issue. Sorry, the clock spring issue, because they are intermittently working and not working. Now the airbag lights, we can look up on the scan tool now quickly and see if we can make that resistance to change by moving on that clock spring. So I'm just gonna go back. The airbag light is still on. So I'm just gonna go back onto the data again for driver's airbag resistance there, and we'll see if we can make that jump. Graph. We just watch the screen here, and as I'm turning, I'll probably put it up there so we don't have to hold it. So let's turn the wheel left and right, and as I'm pushing on the no, it's definitely not changing. It's got an open circuit, I believe. So one test we can do is we can disconnect this airbag connector right there and see if that makes any difference. It is recommended to just turn the key off just to be safe when you're undoing this airbag connectors. We're just gonna take this airbag plug off, and we'll just see on the screen on the scan tool, see if we got that resistance of a different value or staying at 25. So just shows you that if it's an open circuit or a short circuit fault. So I got my airbag open, the connector is off, and we're still seeing 25, 24 here. So that suggests that we have an open circuit in that clock spring. Now we'll just put the connector back on. Turn the key back on. See, just disconnecting and connecting the connector made any difference on this data. Sometimes that's enough to throw a fault code, but on the driver's resistance still not changing. So we definitely have an open in the clock spring. Now we can also have a problem with the airbag itself. So in order to do that, we're going to have to take it off and measure some resistance there. So we'll just turn this car off, ignition off, and we'll take this airbag out. So to do this is pretty easy. There's a hole in this side and there's a hole on the other side like that. So you just got to push it with a long screwdriver. Just push 2 tabs, and it might have a third one at the bottom too, right there, and it will come out. So I'll just start the car so we can turn the steering wheel easy. So basically all I'm doing is pushing with the screwdriver. There you go, that's one, and we push on this one too, and then we push it on this one as well, and this should come out. Sorry guys, it was just the horn pad was just on a location where it was touching the ground for the horn. So now our airbag's off. We can just bring this steering straight. Now we're just gonna have a look at the back here. That's your airbag connector there. So what we can do, we can turn the car off. Simply disconnect the airbag connector as such, and we'll just lift that up. Now that's just your horn connector there for the horn, and now we can do 2 ways. We can do a resistance check between here and the plug at the bottom and see if there's an open circuit on that, or we can check the resistance on this airbag, and if it is good, then we know more than likely the fault is on the clock spring. Alright, okay, now what we're gonna have here is a like a little plate spring inside there that's gonna short this pin out whenever you take the connector off. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to push that plate in order for us to get a right reading, because if I do it right now without pushing the plate, we're going to see open so we're going to see basically no resistance, because all we're doing is we're just shorting out 2 pins like that. That's all you're gonna see there. So that's why we need to push that little tab in there, little spring, just using little probe here. Yeah, if I keep it like this, should work for us. Yeah, that should be disconnected there. So we're just gonna check the resistance on this airbag, and we're gonna need to see 2.5, near about 2.5 volt of resistance. There you go. We're around 2.5. So I'm pretty happy with that result. So we know this airbag is good. I want to do some testing on that audio radio switches on the steering, but before we do that, I just want to quickly show you how it works. So basically on these buttons, this will probably apply for a lot of cars. It's pretty much a universal sort of setup. So what you're gonna have is you're gonna have some sort of computer. It could be radio computer, it could be, you know, cruise control computer. Let's say we're checking the radio. Let's say this is a radio as a module. What's going to happen is radio is going to send 2 wires, and this is your coil clock spring. So one's going to have 5 volt reference and one's going to have earth. So this will go through the coil spring and it will go down, go up on the radio buttons. But on the radio button you might see 4 wires, because 2 wires is for your lights. When you turn the headlights on, the buttons has to light up too. So sometimes the computer will send extra 2 wires through the coil spring, clock spring, and onto your radio buttons. So basically the extra 2 wires from the computer is gonna go through the clock spring, and this is mainly just for the light. So this is your, let's say, switch in the steering. This is just for the lights. When you turn the headlights on, you're gonna have 12 volts and earth coming. That's all. And other lights here, we got 2 other wires here going through the clock spring. This is going to be your wires for the switch. So what this switch gonna do is the 5 volts gonna come in and it's gonna go through the register and we'll find a path to ground. So every button on this radio, like you got a mode, volume up and down, mute button, all the buttons gonna have its own register, and the register are different on every button. So that's how you'll pull the 5 volt down according to the register to different voltage. That's how the computer knows which button you're pressing. Alright, at the steering we got the buttons for the volume and all that. For the radio we got the cruise controls and the trip meters here. So we know the cruise control and trip meters are intermittent. Every time I turn the steering left or right, it sort of come back to life and all that. And we tested the airbag. Airbag is good. I'm pretty confident we have a clock spring issue on this one. We can always test the wiring at the input on the clock spring here. The yellow one's always going to be the airbag circuit, so there's going to be two wires coming in, and we can put a little resistor, 2.5 ohm or 2 ohm resistor, and we can make that light disappear. If that happens, we know the circuit is good and the computer is good. We might do that at the end, but right now only thing I can't make it to work is the volume buttons. So we're gonna do a bit more testing here. I'm still thinking the clock spring gonna fix everything, but just to make sure there's nothing else going on, we're gonna test this circuit out. So now to check the volumes buttons on this one, circuits on this one, I just took the connector from behind here for the volume control. So from the airbag, the connection comes up here. This is for your airbag harness. This is your horn harness, but there's this white connector here, got a bunch of wires. Some of them goes to this buttons control here, some of them goes to this wiring here to the volume control. So we see there's 4 wires, like I explained to you on the diagram. 2's gonna be our light circuit for illumination. When you turn the headlights on, this light will light up in there. And 2's gonna be 2 other wires gonna be 5-volt reference and earth circuit. So we're just basically gonna look for that. I'll just turn my multimeter on here, and I got my earth on just on the steering there. Let's see if you can see this or not, but I'll just probably put it right there. Right now I'm just gonna look for 12 volts and earth. That way we know which wires for illumination. So for that reason, we're gonna have to turn the ignition on and also the headlight on. So we're just gonna go one by one and we'll identify which wire is for what. So we got 3 volts coming in there on that green wire. There's nothing on the second wire. The black wire also got has 2.5 volt almost, and the last wire has nothing, and I'm not seeing any 12 volt here where you should have a 12 volt. Now I'm just gonna use my test light connected to the battery positive. I just stole positive terminal through the cigarette lighter. Obviously you gotta test our test light first, make sure it lights up when it finds the ground. As such, we know the test light's working. Now all I'm gonna do is just trying to find, I'll just put this aside for now. We're just gonna find the earth here. So according to my knowledge, we should have 2 earth here if everything is intact. So I'm just back probing it there, and I got no earth on none of the wire. We can do the same test up here on this connector coming out of the clock spring. So we just follow the wires colors here, green, yellow with the red, black, and kind of like a grayish color wire. So we just look up here, the same color wires, and we can see it's right next to each other, green and the black one. So we check for the earth right here, the same way. We might need to use a probe because this test light tip is a little bit thick, so I'll just use the probe here. Nothing on that. I got nothing on that. I got I got earth on that yellow wire. I don't know why we didn't have earth here. Let's double check that. We got earth. I just didn't have the good connection on that the gray wire. And next one is the yellow with the red wire just below that. So, and we got nothing on that one. Now it's because I don't see any powers, nothing coming in here, so I'm not sure which 2 wires is our control for the switches and which 2 is our illumination. I'm not too sure here what's what's what. So and I don't really know what colors is what here, but I do know at the before the clock spring which color wires are what. So maybe we'll do a test there and see if we got everything we need to see there. So if you got everything we need to see down there, that means more than likely the problem is going to be on the clock spring. So we'll do that. So just put that multimeter right there. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna disconnect this connector, not the yellow one. Yellow one is for airbag, so we're just gonna disconnect this wire. And on this wiring, I know these two wires, green and the brown wire, is my control. So one should have 5 volt, one should have earth. And at the top here you see blue with the gray. That's our illumination light for the buttons on the radio switches there. So let's just double check. We just got our headlights on, and we're just gonna look for a 12 volt here. And right there on the blue wire we got 12 volt. Just to verify our 12 volt, we can always use our test light and verify our 12 volt test light to the battery negative. I'm just going to use the steering here for the earth, and we just use our test light, and we will try to find that earth power again on that blue wire. And there you go, the blue wire turns on. Just to verify everything I'm saying is right, we turn the headlight off, and this light should go off. There you go, the headlights off, the lights going off, headlights on, lights come back on. So we know the power for the light for that switch is good. Now we're gonna go back to, I'll just put my test light to battery positive, and we're gonna find the earth. So wire right next to it, the gray wire, should be our earth, and we got earth right there. And this shouldn't really matter in my opinion. Actually it does. So it's also got the control from the headlight. So every time we turn the headlight on, the earth comes in too. But we were not seeing any power up here on the switch. So that already suggests that we got a clock spring issue, right? Okay. Next one is just on that green and the brown wire. Like I said, one is our 5 volt, one's earth. So let's try to find the earth while you have the test light hooked up to battery negative. Let's go to one of the wire. So we got earth on that green wire, and on the brown wire we need to see 5 volts. So let's just check on that multimeter there. Got my earth hooked up, yeah. And so the green is earth is good, and the brown color wire only got 3.3 volts. We should have 5 volts. If I'm doing everything right here, we should have 5 volts. 3.3 volts I don't think is enough voltage for this circuit. And this both wire comes from the radio. A radio has its own computer, it comes from there. I don't like that for some reason. I'm just gonna quickly see if I got any other 5 volts. There's a 12 volt there for your light circuit for different switches, I think. Got 12 volt there as well. We got nothing there. 5 volts there. Nothing there. Nothing there. So we got 5 volts on this other blue wire as well. And I'm thinking this blue wire is for the radio. It's for the control on the cruise or the trip meter, I think, because at right here on the connector, the harnesses goes 2 ways. So some of them wires goes to this switch, some of them goes to, so we need to see two 5 volts here, right? So if I plug it in and we see which one's getting 5 volts at the top, because I'm a little bit confused here because they're both blue wire. Okay, so I've connected it and we're just gonna check for 5 volts here. So we got 2 green wires there. So this green wire that's going into this switch has 3 volts like we saw down there. And up here, I think this orange wire, okay, if you can see on the multimeter, I got 5 volts. So that orange wire got 5 volt, and I can see on the switch here on the cruise control, and that 5 volts is actually going into the cruise control circuit. So the 5 volt we're seeing down here is actually for the cruise control, but on the volume and the radio, all the radio buttons should have 5 volts. On this blue wire, but we only, not blue wire, on the brown wire, but we only got 3.3 volts. I don't think that will work. There's something wrong with this circuit, most likely, but I'm not 100% sure. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect these wires directly to the switch, and we'll see if the volumes, everything turns on, because it's definitely not making sense to me. Alright, we'll do that then. Alright, I will just show you my setup here. So basically I got my test leads brown and on the green wire, the bottom one, on that plug before the clock spring. So the brown is my yellow lead, and up here it goes to my green wire going into the switch after the clock spring up here. And just try make sure they don't touch each other. It doesn't really matter even if they touch each other, but just make sure, just to be safe, just try to keep it away from touching it. Okay, so the red one is going into my yellow with red wire going to the buttons on the steering, and at the bottom we got the red one connected to the green wire. Okay, now what we did right here is we eliminate the clock spring completely. Now we're going directly from this connector at the bottom before the clock spring and going to the connector after the clock spring. Before the clock spring and up here after the clock spring. So we basically made a bridge. Now we're going to turn the key on and let's see if our radio buttons are functioning the way it should be. Alright, so we'll just turn the radio on. We can hear it, radio is coming on. Now we just go volume up and down, and on the screen, as you can see, the volume buttons are working, going up and down. We change the channel here, and channel are changing. We go to mode setting, FM, FM3, AM, my music, and it's doing all that. Good. Now we go to mute button here, and radio is muted. So just by bridging from here to there, everything's working on the radio. That means the problem is the clock spring here on the radio side of the switches as well. We know everything is working, but I'm still wondering why we only have 3 volt there. I'm pretty much sure I should be seeing 5 volt, but again, I don't have a wiring diagram, I don't have information, I'm just going by experience. Let's try it again. Just look up on that multimeter there, it's on volt. I'm just gonna see what volt is coming out of that brown wire again. and you can see it's 3.3 volt. It's definitely not 5 volts. So, but it is working, so we know circuit should be good. So maybe Hyundai will put 3.3 volts on that circuit. I'm not sure, but it is working. Like I said, I'm not too worried about it as long as it's working. And also I got a little backstory on this car. So reckon what happened was, one day the radio started smoking. A lot of smoke coming out of the radio, and then she stopped the car, and then after a while the smoke disappeared, and since he continued driving, and since then the airbag lights, all these buttons on the steerings, it has been faulty. So I don't know when that radio started smoking, maybe it damaged that circuit, 5 volt circuit. That's why we're only seeing 3 volt there. I'm not too sure about it, but that's a little bit of history. So in my opinion, what happened to this car is someone did touch something on the steering. They did some repair, or on the steering system, and they didn't set the clock spring right in the middle. So after the repair is done, obviously customer took the car, and while they were turning the steering, they broke all the wires pretty much on the clock spring, because it's not just one circuit that has fault, it's all the circuit has fault. So I'm pretty sure that's what happened, because clock spring wires don't just break all of them at once. So it's very I don't believe it's a natural wear and tear. I think it's someone did something that's caused this to happen, for all the wires to break like that. Now another thing I quickly want to show you, like I explained to you on the board, like I said, the computer sends 5 volts and the earth, and every time you press the buttons on the steering, it just drops that voltage to a different level. That's how the computer knows which buttons you're pressing. So just to prove that, and just to show you guys what I'm talking about, I'm just gonna put my scope now on the same wires we're testing, and then I'll explain to you what I'm talking about here. So I'm just gonna hook up my scope quickly, and we're just gonna go to my scope here. Go scope, we just use channel 1. We'll just change that time base a little bit. We don't need that long of a time base, so we'll just go 1 second screen, maybe 1 second screen there on the. See if you can see it or not, but I'll try this on the screen here. At the moment sitting at 0 volt. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to get a probably just use I'll just grab a probe here. We might just use this. I will just use that one. So I'll put this wire on that 5 volt, because earth's not gonna change, the 5 volts gonna drop. So I'm gonna put that 5 volt the scope on the 5 volt wire there, and you can see on the screen it's not really a 5 volt, it was only showing 3.3 volts, so we got about 2-3 volts on the screen, right? So every time I'll press the button on this screen, on the radio, you can watch on the screen, it will change the voltage. Look at that. That's the volume up, that's volume down. That channel change up, channel change down, mode, and you got mute button there. So you can see, I'll just pause that, do it again. So we got up, down, channel up, channel down, mode, and a mute button. I'll just pause that, and you can see there the voltage drop on every buttons are different voltage level. So that's how the computer knows which button you're pressing. Alright, that's it for this one. I think we're gonna need a clock spring, and it will fix all our problem, I believe. Alright, just before we finish this video, I just wanted to quickly show you the airbag fault here. Like I explained to you before, we're gonna just test out the airbag circuit and the computer as well. So right here at the bottom you got a yellow plug, so we simply just take that plug off. So this is before the clock spring, right? Now we're gonna have two pin here, two wires coming in, even if it shows 4 there, but there's only 2 wire. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put resistor on this one to verify our wiring and the computer. So that way we know the airbags, the clock spring's gonna fix all our airbag problem as well. Because we already tested the airbag itself, and we know the resistance is good there, so more than likely I think airbag is alright. So what we're gonna do, turn the key on, we're gonna just go to data, and on the data we're gonna look for that driver's airbag again, right there. We'll just graph that out just for easy viewing. So right there. So I'll get you guys focus on that screen there. I got the airbag connector off. It's at 25.4 ohm. So for this test I'm gonna need some of my test leads, so we don't need that, so let's get rid of that for now. So I'm gonna need that, so we'll use this resistance box here. So this is basically we can put different resistance value. We just dial this resistor up and down and we can set the resistance. So we're just gonna use this for now, and I'm gonna need one more. We'll just use the black lead here, and we just use our test equipment, and we'll just go on that one. So just ignore everything. We just gonna focus on this resistor box, scan tool, my keys is on, and the airbag connector is disconnected. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take 2 leads off the resistor box. We'll just use our probe, and we're gonna back probe on them 2 wires coming from the airbag. Alright. As soon as I put the probe, we can see on the screen our resistance has dropped from 25 to 9 or 10 volts now. I don't know why it's happening, because all my test leads should be right, and all our register dials is sitting at 0, so it shouldn't really have any resistance. But anyway, so we know the airbags usually work around 2.5 volts, somewhere there. So we're just gonna put a 2.5 volt resistor, which start with 2. So if you go 1 and 2 here, we got 2 ohm right there. but on the scan tool I'm seeing a very high resistance, 9.7. Why is that? We may have a very loose connection somewhere, I'm thinking. Let's check my connection, just make sure everything is right here. Sometimes when you have a loose connection, you're gonna see a higher resistance. So we'll just fix that up first. It would be nice if you could go directly at the front of the connection, but I just don't want to probe anything in there. But anyway, like resistance can vary with the temperature too, so it's a pretty hot day today. That might be something to do with it, but like I said, you can set your resistance here. We go back to 1. When I have 0, I got 2 ohms on the scan tool right here. You can see. For some reason, obviously, we not getting good reading here for resistance. Could be my resistor box is not very precise. It could be I still have a loose connection, so I'm not too sure. Let me maybe try changing my lead here. Just this red lead. I don't really trust this red lead. It had given me false reading in the past, so I'll just grab a different ones. Yeah. Anyway, my resistance is not showing me a precise value here, but you got the idea. Basically, I'm gonna put resistance in that wire, in that yellow connector for 2 airbag wire, and we got our voltage, resistance level on the scan tool 2.3, 2.4 ohm, which is we should be good for airbag circuit. If I take these resistors off, when the resistance gonna jump up to 25. So we're just gonna simulate as we got the airbag connected to that circuit. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn the key off, because airbag lights should be on at the moment. Right, airbag lights on. We can start the car. The airbag light should stay on because airbag will do its testing for its circuit and the components only when you first turn the key on. So sometimes you're gonna have to do 2 cycles of key. Sometimes 1 cycle is fine depending on the car. So we just watch the airbag. It's coming on. Yes. Now we turn the key off, turn it back on. That airbag light should go off if we got everything right here. Sometimes you may have to erase the fault code too. So we'll try one more time. So the airbag light is staying on. So what we probably should do here now is we should go back and erase that fault code real quick. Alright, we erase that fault, yes, yes. And we will turn the key back off and go back on and start the car. The airbag light should go off. And it's still not going off. Let's check our fault codes again. We got no fault code. That airbag should go off. Try again. We don't have any fault codes. Why is Yeah, we got the driver's resistance pretty good, 2.3 ohm, and we got no fault code. I am not sure why we still have the lights on and the fault code is not coming back, even after I turn the car off and on a few times. Maybe, just let me think, maybe we go to event 1. There's two, event 1 and event 2. I'm not sure what that means, but let's see if there's another fault code stored there. There's no fault code there on event 1. Let's try event airbag 2. See if there's any fault code there. There's no fault code anyway, and this oh yeah, that's right, because I have the I'm pretty sure what's happening is because we have the airbag trying to communicate with the airbag with our scan tool. That's why the light was coming on, because it just shows you that it is making communication with the scan tool. Some cars does that for some reason, but now the light's gone. As soon as I went away from my airbag computer, just back out of the airbag module, the light's gone off. We can try turning off and back on. The airbag light stays off, should stay off right there. So as soon as I go to communication, the airbag light comes on. I think it just shows that we are making communication. Now let's check for trouble codes. We got no trouble codes. Now, just to prove our theory, we just take this resistor off and we turn the key off and back on again, start the car. Let's see if the fault codes came back. Sometimes you're gonna have to do it twice, sometimes one key cycle is enough. Yeah, straight away our airbag resistance to high circuit is back on. So yeah, we know for fact now the circuit is good, computer is good. We're gonna need a clock spring, and that should fix all our problems we having on this car. So now let's talk about the smoke coming from the radio. So I believe what happened was, like I said before, someone was playing with the steering, didn't set the airbag clock spring right. So when the customer was driving, obviously the wires broken on the clock spring, and they start touching on each other. And like I said, the radio is also a computer, so the computer sends that 12 volt earth, 5 volts and all that to the radio switch here. I think they got sorted out, and that's why you are seeing that in the clock spring they sorted out. So that's why you're seeing the smoke coming out of the radio. That's my conclusion on this. So basically a new clock spring and everything should be right.